Hello everyone and welcome to Rudy's Retro Intel. On today's show we're going to be looking at the DESTEST test. Now the DESTEST test is a diagnostics, it's a dead test diagnostics for the Commodore 64. So we're going to take a deeper look at this today. So stay tuned and let's peek inside and poke around. Okay, the Dead Test cartridge looks like a regular cartridge for your Commodore 64, and like I mentioned in the beginning, this is a replacement for your Dead Test. So I broke out my ZIF socket 64, which I use for troubleshooting, testing chips and so on and so forth. And let's put in the original Dead Test. This board I have here has a Dead Test and a diagnostic, like a more in-depth diagnostics for testing with harnesses. So let's plug this in and see what we get on our 64. Now I put a bad RAM chip on here because I want to simulate the 64 with bad memory. Let's fire this up and see what we get. And like regular Dead Test, it takes a while and we get flashing. So we can see here on the screen we are getting the flashing, nothing else. We don't know if it's just the memory chip is bad or something else is bad. So let's, well, in this case you would have to record, let's stop the flashing, you'd have to record how many flashes you're getting. You're getting 1 or 2 or 5 or 6, and you have to be sure you count the right ones. Now you then look it up and then find out which chip to replace. Now you could have more than one bad chip or one bad RAM chip. So you do the first one, replace it, put a socket and put a new another RAM chip in there, and then test it again. Then you get more flashes. Well, let's see how the DES test does things a little bit differently. So I'm going to plug this in. I've taken the board out of the cartridge just to show you the board itself. So let's plug this in and let's fire it up. Oh, and right away we're getting a screen here, and as we can see on this screen we are seeing bit 2. So the way this works is that you would look at the lines on the screen, and green is good and red is bad. It says also on the screen itself that if you get good, it's green, if it's bad, it's red bits, and that's the stripes on the side, and they're discovered during the VIC2 page 0 stack page startup memory. So the way it works is when it first starts up, it checks the VIC2 chip, then it checks 0 page, stack page, and the checksum for the ROM itself. So we want to ensure that the ROM is on this board or on this cartridge is working properly. So once it's done that, it starts doing the memory test. But as you can see, it's failed the memory test, and the memory test is only for the first 4K, and we'll see more about that in a moment. So let's replace it. But before I do that, let's remove all the other chips that aren't required and see what happens when we boot up, because there could be a problem with the memory chip, but it could also be a problem that, let's say, a ROM chip is causing, or the SID chip is causing on the address line, which then confuses the RAM chip. So let's pull them out and we'll move on to the next test. So the good thing with my socketed board is I can easily pull out all the ROMs. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And then the next, I'm going to pull out the CIA chips, 1 and 2. And I'm going to pull out the SID chip. So all we have now on the board is we have the 6510 CPU, the PLA, and the VIC2. So let's power this up and see what happens. And again, we're getting the same screen. It's still showing a bit 2. Now if we look in the manual, so let's pull out the manual here. And what is bit 2? So bit 2, so basically you'd have to look up your board. Mine's a 326.298 board, and pin 2 or bit 2 represents U22, and U22 is this exact socket. So let's replace this, pull it out, and put in a known working IC. Now this socket, this ZIF socket is acting up, I have to replace it. These ZIF sockets here have this blue tape, and the reason that is I couldn't find the smaller ZIF sockets for the ROMs, and so what I've done is I've taken the bigger one, I've actually cut the pins on the bottom, the ones that aren't used, and put some blue tape on the bottom and on the top, so that when you put the ROM in it, you know exactly where it goes. And that's why you have that. Anyways, let's boot up this now and see what happens. And as we see, it's now going through and doing the memory test. Now the borders indicate which part of the memory is happening. Well, let's wait for this part to go so we can see that there is oh, come on, still doing more memory testing here. Give it a moment, and this will continuously loop until it finds an error. So you can run this diagnostics many times. So we can see that the borders represent the memory, so 0 to 1K, 1K to 2K, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, then the color RAM, and then all 4K. And we get the check marks, meaning that they're good, and we get this screen popping up as it's doing its additional memory testing. Now let us, so we can see that without any of these other ICs, we can actually do a proper diagnostics. Now, if there was more than one IC, that RAM IC that was bad, it would show up on this list. Now there we go. See, we got the error. This error here is showing that the problem is it's not fixed fully. Again, it's this ZIF socket. Let me see if I can reseat this and go from there. Let's try it again. And yeah, so when you're doing testing, yep, again, see it right away, this is a bad. Let's fire this up one more time. So the best thing to do when you're doing diagnostics is to pull out all the chips that aren't required. So the 2 CII chips and the 3 ROM chips are not required. The SID chip, again, not required. We just need the 6502, PLA, and the VIC-2. So as long as those 3 are working, then the test can continue and go on from there. Okay, the next thing I want to do now is I want to put everything back together again, and we're going to pull out the 64C board and run the DESTEST test on that. So let's put everything back. And then once that's done, I'm going to run it one more time just to make sure everything is good, everything is in the sockets properly. And we'll run our test, and it should work just fine. And as we see up in the corner, we can, there we can see it's running fine. Everything is good. I wasn't expecting anything else to be broken on it, so let's power this off and switch over to the 64C. Okay, so here is the 64C, the cost reduced version, and so let's hook everything up into here, and then we'll run our test again. Okay, so that's all ready to go. Let's do a power up and see what happens. And as we see, it's running through its test. So great, this is going to run through all the tests on the 64C. So as we can see, the 64 and the 64C, the cartridge works on both. Now in the documentation, make sure you read the documentation, the manual for this thing. There is some 64C boards it doesn't work with, and you'd have to install a resistor, or actually two of them on the board to make it work. However, my 64C is working just fine. So great product. And one thing I also want to mention, this will also work on the Commodore 128. Now, in order for the Commodore 128 to work, it will run it in the 64 mode, and it requires the 128 kernel and the Z80 or Z80, whatever you want to pronounce it, and the MMU to be working. So all those three have to be working in order for the DESTEST test to work. The memory test is called a March B. I will leave a description. I'll leave a link below to where you can find out more information about the March B testing of the RAM. I'll also leave you the link for feedback. So if you get at your DESTEST cartridge, you can contact Matthew, I believe, to give him feedback and comments about the DESTEST test, and also leave a link below to where I got mine. I got mine at Retro Rewind. It's a Canadian company that sells this diagnostics and a whole bunch of other things. So, give them a look. This is not a sponsored video. I picked mine up at the World of Commodore. Great event, and and that's about it. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I highly recommend getting this because the Dead Test is 40 years now old, and this is the new version, which is fantastic. It's I can't say enough good things about it, and a lot of people have been using it and having good experience with it. So hopefully you buy it, give it a try, and that's it. Take care, and thanks for watching.